I went to college with James Coburn, and Steve McQueen was a very good friend. Bo Derek is a really good friend of mine, and I'd like to spend more time with her. My good friend Yao Ming was the first big player in the NBA to come from China. He gave himself to the game and was successful. That inspired the NBA to invest more and do more for the game of basketball. We're building academies not just in China, but in India, Africa, Europe and South America as well. If you're going through friendship issues, I would say, first of all, take a step back. How important is the friendship to you? Sometimes, if someone's not being a good friend to you and isn't treating you the way you should be treated, then you kind of have to move on sometimes. I love Charles Barkley. He's a good friend of mine and he's a funny guy. He knows nothing about college basketball, less than nothing. Andy Warhol was a good friend of mine. We used to go to the Studio 54 nightclub together with the likes of Liza Minnelli, and we'd dance through the night. I have had lots of friends who've been affected by AIDS, and a very good friend of mine, Oscar Moore, died of AIDS, and I was with him in his last year quite a bit. And of course he was a man living in a very rich culture with a wealthy family who was able to afford health care. Manuel is still today a good friend. The others I see rarely, but with Edgar I phone from time to time. James Blake is a real good friend of mine. He's real different than what you thinks. He's super turned up. Depending on what day of the week it is and what time of the month it is, I'm a good friend or not a good friend. I'm more or less a good mom or not a good mom, more or less a good mate or not a good mate. That's just life, whether or not you're public. I prefer to call the most obnoxious feminists what they really are, feminazis. Tom Hazlitt, a good friend who is an esteemed and highly regarded professor of economics at the University of California at Davis, coined the term to describe any female who is intolerant of any point of view that challenges militant feminism. We would like to have friendly regimes with enough broad participation of their populations to maintain long-term stability, so that we would have not only access to the region's wealth, but we would be able to ensure the security of our good friend Israel. Gary Cooper was a good friend. He was a great nature lover. He was like an American Indian. He knew every leaf that was turned over. It was an education to go for a walk with him. I've had to deal with everything, but everyone has helped me, including Sir Alex Ferguson, to get through. George Best was a good friend of mine. We loved each other. We both knew where we were coming from. It's equally as important to me to be a good friend and a good sister and a good daughter. I'm very close with my family and friends. I'm passionate about being true to myself, sending good energy to the people around me, traveling, staying inspired, being a good friend, being a good daughter, being a good sister. Casey Affleck is a really good friend of mine. I know Casey a lot better than I know Ben, even though Ben and I have worked together a lot. With Clinton, there's no question that I would have made fun of his out-and-out lying, but he's also a good friend. I've actually walked out on a girl for being rude to a waitress. I go into that restaurant all the time, and that waitress was a good friend of mine. Physical attributes can make you appealing, but to keep the appeal going, one has to draw from within. You have to be a real person. Your fans and the people you associate with have to be able to see beyond your looks. You have to be a good friend, dutiful son and a good family man. I'm a good son, a good father, a good husband. I've been married to the same woman for 30 years. I'm a good friend. I finished college, I have my education, I donate money anonymously. So when people criticize the kind of characters that I play on screen, I go, you know, that's part of history. There is nothing better than the encouragement of a good friend. Kanye has been a good friend for 10 years. He flew back from London to Los Angeles for 24 hours just to go to my wedding. My daughter's name is Neeson Daisy, but everyone calls her Daisy. Her mom chose Neeson and I chose Daisy after she was born. The mother is a good friend of mine who I was seeing a while ago. We are no longer together. I pride myself on being a good friend, and all my friends can attest to that. A good friend is my nearest relation. Well, Eminem, you know, I know him longer. I've been signed to his label since 2001 and he's a good friend. So, being a good man is not an exam or a qualification, it changes, and it incorporates being a good friend, a good father, a good employee, a good boss, a good neighbor and a good citizen. If you have an ounce of common sense and one good friend, you don't need an analyst. I was talking to my good friend Kid Rock a while ago, and he told me if I'd send him a helmet, he'd send me an autographed platinum record. I thought that was a pretty sweet swap. With my good friend Rob Penny, I founded the Black Horizons Theater in Pittsburgh with the idea of using the theater to politicize the community or, as we said in those days, to raise the consciousness of the people. I have a good friend who's a Texas girl. Texas girls are a whole different breed. There's times when you're having dinner with a good friend and you're in the middle of a conversation and somebody comes up and cuts you off. Can you sign this? Can I take a picture with you? I'm adjusting to all the attention. I once sang Summer Nights from Grease at a bar in Melbourne with John Travolta, who's a good friend of mine. He looked cool singing the part of Danny, sitting in an armchair, smoking a cigar, while I got stuck playing Sandy. You don't have to be married to have a good friend as your partner for life. Would a good friend, a smart friend, encourage you to do something as dishonorable as not pay a bill you're morally and legally obligated to pay? I don't think so. I have a feeling that I make a very good friend, and I'm a good mother, and a good sister, and a good citizen. I am involved in life itself, all of it, and I have a lot of energy and a lot of nerve. Someone that you obviously can trust and someone that you would trust your life with, that's a really good friend. Your good friend has just taken a piece of cake out of the garbage and eaten it. You will probably need this information when you check me into the Betty Crocker Clinic. I'm working at trying to be a Christian, and that's serious business. It's like trying to be a good Jew, a good Muslim, a good Buddhist, a good Shintoist, a good Zoroastrian, a good friend, a good lover, a good mother, a good buddy. It's serious business. I'm a great mother because of my intentions on being a great mother. I'm a good friend because I'm loyal. I'm a good daughter because I've hopefully made my mother proud. I'm a great human being because I accept that there's a spiritual being underneath it all. I've always been a woman of faith. I'm one of 7 kids, and I love being around a bunch of siblings because I think it teaches you independence, and it teaches you how to grow up quickly and also just be a good friend and be a good sister. The Fifth Amendment is an old friend and a good friend. One of the great landmarks in men's struggle to be free of tyranny, to be decent and civilized. Jay Leno is wonderful and a good friend, but it will always be the Carson show to a lot of people. Prince Paul is another good friend. He's like an older brother. He'll criticize and be brutally honest with you. That's what I like about Paul. I like to think I'm a pretty good friend. I love having a good time, and I enjoy being able to share those good times with others. Finishing a good book is like leaving a good friend. See, my relationship with Salman is of mutual love, but just because he is a good friend of mine, I wouldn't want to use him for a cameo in my film or ask him to endorse my film. That is not me. Chris Martin's a good friend of mine. I'm actually Apple's godfather. He's an old friend and we've been mates for quite a few years now. I have learned that to have a good friend is the purest of all God's gifts, for it is a love that has no exchange of payment. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.